Welcome to another episode of Time, Talent, Treasure Radio from Stewards Planning Group. Stewards Planning Group is a company that specializes in helping you build purposeful retirement plans, custom plans that not only help clients steward their treasure, but also their time and talent as well. They believe if you're taken care of financially, you can go even further to make the family, community, and kingdom impact you truly desire to make, which is the ultimate purpose of wealth. If you'd like to set up a no-cost, no-obligation meeting with one of their financial advisors, please give them a call at 222-4236. You can request a meeting at stewardsplanning.com, or you can simply stop by their office on 19th Avenue Southwest in Wilbur.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Time, Talent, Treasure Radio. I'm your host, Ben Taatjes, and joined in the studio today again with Claire Molden. Claire, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you, Ben?
You know, I'm doing great. I am, as we talked about on last week's show, kind of just getting ready for, empty nest phase. My one daughter that's now a senior, and of course you're on the completely different side of this with young kids going back to school. And it was fun last week talking about 529 plans. Education's so important and ties into stewardship so well as we look forward to shaping these little lives and families and communities. There's a few things that we were able to cover last week, and I want to just kind of briefly go over those again, and then we'll get into kind of, maybe it's a misnomer right now that people are talking about with these new MAGA accounts and how they could be used for education. But before I get into that, last week we talked specifically about really these 529 plans, which have been around a long time, okay? Yep. But I think they've just become so much better. The legislation lately has made them more beneficial, made them a little more flexible. Just really recap last week's, what are the key couple changes that make it better for people?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, 529s have become a lot more flexible in the last few years. We always get that question about, what if my kid doesn't go to college? Why am I putting this money away if they don't? Well, you can use unused 529 funds now and roll them into a Roth IRA. So that kind of solves that question, and it still promotes long-term growth and tax-free growth inside of first an education account and second retirement account. So that's one of the main reasons I really love using a 529. And then the One Big Beautiful Bill really expanded the use of them for K-12 purposes and after college for licensing and credentialing your industry. So, I think 529s are kind of the way to go for most people, but that's not for everyone either. I mean, that's why it's important you sit down with your advisor and you create a plan. Is this the right vehicle for me to be using for college savings?
Yeah, I love that, Claire. And I think one of the things that you just talked about with the flexibility for our clients is many times these are grandparents funding these things. A lot of times that's what we see. It's grandparents coming in and they're doing the funding for their grandchildren, and they don't want to pigeonhole now my grandchild needs to go to college to get this benefit. Sometimes that's the biggest hang up in getting these accounts because many times these are infants, right? Who knows where their skills and abilities will lie? And if they can take and start putting money into these 529 plans now, knowing that, if it has to be, if the child wants to go into a trade school or they want to do something different, they can, or if they don't want to go to college at all, and they just want to take that money and, subject to limitations, move them to Roth IRAs, they can. So that's one of the things that I love about that as well. Now, you were kind of hinting towards this other type of account that I think people have maybe don't understand fully, because I've heard people say, why wouldn't I just use what they're calling a Trump account? Can you explain to us what that really is and why somebody might use a 529 instead of that if really their goal is for education?
Yeah, absolutely. So coming out of the recent legislation of the One Big Beautiful Bill, now we have access to what's called these Trump accounts, and I say that with air quotes. They're actually called MAGA accounts, and it's not MAGA how you think it is. It's actually Money Account for Growth and Advancement. So it's really interesting how creative these legislators are when they create these bills and legislation. So essentially, there's two parts that I really want to cover here. So the first part, which is what everyone's heard of, is it's free money, and it really is. It is free money. So the government is actually going to fund these accounts. They're going to fund $1,000 into a Trump account or a MAGA account for any child that was born between January 1st of 2025 through December 31st of 2028. So that for new families, for young people, I mean, that's a huge opportunity to claim $1,000 from the U.S. government.
And they don't automatically do that, right? You have to take some action in order to make this happen. How does that actually work?
So we're still learning about kind of the operations and the mechanics of all of this, but it's in the bill, so it's going to happen. So if you have more questions on how this is implemented, certainly give us a call.
Yeah, and I love that. I think the key there is it's free, quote unquote, money. I mean, somebody's going to pay for it, right? But there is an opportunity there that they're looking at, jump starting somebody so that they'll start saving. And hopefully the thought is, hey, yeah, now we get used to putting a little money away, putting a little money aside. Now, Claire, are these growing tax-free? Is it tax-deferred? And what's the difference?
Here's the thing. It's growing tax-deferred, and it's a little bit different than your, more traditional tax-deferred accounts, like, say, a traditional IRA. So we talked earlier about a 529. So that's going to grow tax-free, much like a Roth IRA. So these Trump accounts are going to grow tax-deferred. So, the government puts that $1,000 in. It's going to grow tax-deferred until you take that money out. And there's some stipulations on what you can use this for. You can use for college expenses. You can use it for first-time home buying. But if you use it for those qualified expenses, it's going to be at long-term capital gain tax rates, which is more favorable than ordinary income. If you don't use it for those specific expenses, then it's going to be taxed at ordinary income. So you have to really be careful on what you're using it for. And there's some age limitations too. So you can't just take the money and then take it out next year when the child's 2. You have to hold it until they're at least 18.
Okay. So there's age limitations. Many times we learn that there's other limitations with some of these types of things. But I think what's important here is that you start with a plan, right? You sit down with your planner, you sit down with your CPA, you sit down with your financial advisor, and you find out like which of these types of accounts fit best for your situation. So is there anything else that somebody should know about the MAGA account?
Yeah, so on top of that one-time $1,000 contribution that the government will make on your behalf, you can also add your own contribution money. And right now the limit is at $5,000 per year that you can add. And that can be anyone who adds to this account. It can be you as the parent. It can be the grandparent. It can be a family member. But that limit is $5,000.
And don't just listen to the media or somebody that says, oh, you got to have a Trump account, right? Or you got to do this, you got to do that. But make sure you're being intentional about stewardship. And I think that's what we want you to go away with today.
Yeah, absolutely. This is just another tool in your toolbox that you can use for planning. And sitting down with your financial planner, your financial advisor will really help you utilize those tools and figure out which tool makes the most sense in your situation, because your situation is not the same as everyone else's. Even if everyone else's kids is going to college too, definitely not the same.
Yeah, so you want to be aware of that, and that's part of stewardship, right? We always talk about the first step, right? We organize, we decide what are we stewarding over today, and we decide what are we, I'm not going to get too much, we're at 7 minutes already. Okay. Yeah, Claire, no, I appreciate that, and hopefully our listeners learn more about, again, how to steward their resources when it comes to education planning, and until next,
Keep going, I'm cutting a bunch out too.
Oh, you are?
Yeah,
okay.
so we're good.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. And I think that's important. As our clients and as our listeners hear more about stewardship and they hear about best ways for them to prepare the next steward, sometimes that does involve education and putting some money away into an account so that they can have some funds there when the time is right. So until next week, from Stewards Planning Group, Stewards Well.
Do you need help stewarding your time, your talent, or your treasure? If so, Stewards Planning Group can help. Now is the time to set up a no-cost, no-obligation meeting. You can do this one of 3 ways. Number 1, give them a call right now at 222-4236. You can request a meeting online at stewardsplanning.com, or you can just stop by their office located on 19th Avenue Southwest in Wilmer. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Time, Talent, Treasure Radio. We'll see you next time.
Securities offered through Avantax Investment Services. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Avantax Advisory Services. Insurance services offered through an Avantax affiliated insurance agency.